The cafe was louder than usual for a Saturday morning. Couples lingered over lattes, friends laughed around shared muffins, and the hiss of the espresso machine cut through the chatter. Emma Hayes sat at the corner table by the window, notebook open, but her pen hadn't touched the paper in 10 minutes. She was too busy pretending to write, too busy stealing glances toward the door. She didn't expect him to be here. Her ex, Daniel, he walked in just as she'd taken her first sip of coffee. Tall, polished, confident in that infuriating way only he could pull off. A tailored blazer hugged his shoulders, his hair styled like he'd stepped out of an ad. And beside him, like a cruel twist in a bad rom-com, was the woman Emma suspected he'd left her for. Her chest tightened. She hadn't seen Daniel since their breakup, hadn't wanted to. Not because she was still in love with him, she wasn't. But because seeing him would remind her of how small she'd felt at the end, how he'd made her question her worth, how he'd walked away without a second thought. Panic rose. If he saw her, he'd flash that smug, polite smile, introduce the new girlfriend, and Emma would have to fake indifference while her heart hammered like a drum. No, not today. She scanned the cafe, desperate for a shield. And then her eyes landed on him. A man, sitting alone at a nearby table. Broad shoulders under a dark coat. A book in his hands, though his eyes weren't moving across the page. He looked quiet, not lonely in the pitiful sense, but lonely in the way of someone who'd grown used to it. Before she could talk herself out of it, Emma stood, her legs carrying her straight toward him. He looked up just as she reached his table. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, breathless. "But can I?" And before he could answer, she leaned down and wrapped her arms around him. The man stiffened for a split second, startled. Then, to her shock, he didn't pull away. His arms rose slowly, almost cautiously, circling her shoulders. She felt warmth, steady and solid, a presence that grounded her in the storm of panic. Emma pulled back, cheeks burning. "Thank you. Just play along, please." His brow furrowed, but something softened in his eyes. "Trouble," he murmured. Her jaw dropped. "How did you?" "Your face gave it away," he said, a faint smile ghosting across his lips. "Sit." Grateful, she slid into the chair across from him. Daniel's voice floated from across the cafe, too close for comfort. Emma ducked slightly, pretending to study the stranger's book. "You're reading The Great Gatsby," she whispered, noticing the worn cover. "Again," he replied, his tone calm, deep. "I like stories about people chasing what they think they want." His gaze held hers for a beat, and something inside her shifted. Daniel's laugh cut across the room, sharp as glass. Emma's stomach twisted, but the stranger leaned in slightly. "Don't look. Just talk to me." So she did. About nothing at first. The weather, the cafe's croissants, the kind of safe chatter that masked her nerves. But soon, words began spilling out, things she hadn't planned to say. How she felt invisible when Daniel was around. How she hated the way she'd lost herself in the relationship. How, for the first time in months, she wanted to feel free. The stranger listened without interrupting, his eyes intent. Not judgmental, not impatient, just present. When Daniel finally left with his girlfriend, Emma exhaled like she'd been holding her breath underwater. "You just saved me from the most humiliating scene of my life," she said, half laughing. He tilted his head. "Seems like you saved yourself. I just played along." "Still," Emma said, extending her hand. "Thank you. I'm Emma." He hesitated, then took her hand. His grip was firm but gentle. "Ethan," he said. Later that evening, Emma couldn't stop replaying the encounter. She hadn't expected anything more than a quick escape, but Ethan lingered in her thoughts. There was something about him, something unspoken. What she didn't know was that Ethan Cross wasn't just any quiet stranger with a book. He was the CEO of a tech empire, a millionaire with more money than he knew what to do with. But that wealth hadn't bought him peace. His penthouse was silent, his dinners solitary, his phone filled with business contacts but no one who would notice if he disappeared for a week. He'd been invisible in his own way, just like Emma. And her sudden hug had cracked open something he hadn't realized he'd walled off. The next morning, Emma returned to the cafe, unsure why. Part of her told herself she was just chasing comfort in a familiar space. But another part, a braver, quieter part, wondered if Ethan might be there. And he was. Same table, same book, same quiet air. When he saw her, his lips curved slightly. X still haunting you? Not today. Emma smiled, sliding into the chair across from him. But, I was hoping you'd be here. That admission hung between them, sparking something new. They fell into conversation again, and this time it wasn't about distractions. It was about their lives. Emma shared her dream of opening her own design studio, though she admitted fear kept her from pursuing it. Ethan, in turn, confessed little, just that he traveled often, that he'd built something that consumed most of his time, that he sometimes wondered what all the hard work was for. What he didn't say was who he really was. He didn't want to see her face change the way others always did when they learned the truth. He liked that she looked at him like a man with a book, not a bank account. By the third meeting, their connection had deepened into something undeniable. Emma found herself laughing more, opening up more. Ethan felt something stir in him he hadn't felt in years. And then came the moment. It was late evening when Ethan walked her to her car after a long coffee. The street was quiet, the air cool. Emma turned to thank him, to say goodnight. But then headlights swept across the street. A sleek car pulled up, and Daniel stepped out. Emma froze. Daniel's eyes darted from her to Ethan, narrowing. Emma, I didn't realize you moved on so fast. His voice dripped with mock surprise. Ethan stiffened beside her, but Emma felt her pulse spike. She wanted to scream that it wasn't about Daniel anymore, that she didn't need his approval. But the words caught in her throat. Daniel stepped closer, smirking. So, who's this? Some rebound. Doesn't look like your type. The air grew charged. Ethan's jaw tightened, his eyes darkening. He took Emma's hand, steady and sure, and for the first time, his voice carried an edge that cut through the night. Careful, he said to Daniel. You don't know who you're talking to. Emma's breath caught. Daniel sneered, clearly amused. But Ethan didn't waver, his presence radiating a quiet power Emma hadn't seen before. In that moment, Emma realized she didn't know Ethan at all. Not really. Not the man he was, not the life he lived. And Daniel, sensing there was more beneath the surface, leaned in with a sharp grin. Well then, why don't you tell me exactly who you are? Ethan's eyes flicked to Emma's, holding her gaze, as if asking silently, do you want to know? The air between them pulsed with tension, with a secret waiting to explode. And that's where the night left them, caught between revelation and ruin, on the edge of something that could change everything. The streetlight cast a pale glow over the three of them. Emma's pulse thudded so loud she thought both men might hear it. Ethan's hand still held hers, firm and grounding, but his eyes never left Daniel. Well, Daniel prodded, smirk widening. Who exactly are you? Ethan's jaw ticked. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Then he spoke. My name is Ethan Cross, he said evenly. Emma frowned, confused. The name meant nothing to her, but Daniel's smirk faltered. You're joking, Daniel muttered, then let out a short, incredulous laugh. Ethan Cross, as in Cross Tech, the guy who's been on the cover of Forbes. The youngest self-made millionaire in the state. Emma blinked, stunned. She looked at Ethan, searching his face. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't denying it. Her Ethan, the man with the quiet eyes and battered copy of Gatsby, wasn't just a stranger in a cafe. He was one of the most powerful men in the city. Daniel's voice turned sharp. What's this? Some charity project you couldn't possibly be interested in? Enough. Ethan's voice was quiet, but it carried like steel. Emma doesn't answer to you anymore. Whatever history you had with her ends here. The firmness in his tone sent a shiver through her, equal parts awe and uncertainty. Daniel, scowling, muttered something under his breath and retreated to his car, slamming the door so hard it echoed through the street. Emma finally turned to Ethan, her voice trembling. Is it true? Are you really him? He exhaled slowly. Yes. The weight of the revelation pressed down on her. The world she thought she knew about him. Simple coffees, quiet talks, shared laughter, tilted on its axis. Why didn't you tell me? She whispered. Because I liked the way you looked at me, Ethan said softly. Not like a headline, not like a number in a bank account. Just me. Her heart ached at the honesty in his voice, but fear gnawed at her too. You should have told me, she said, stepping back. Now I don't know what's real. That night, Emma lay awake in her tiny apartment, her mind in chaos. She thought about the way Ethan listened, the way his hand steadied hers when Daniel mocked her, the way he'd looked at her like she mattered. But then she thought of the secret, of how she'd been falling for someone she didn't really know. A text lit her phone. Ethan. Please, let me explain. Tomorrow. Same cafe. Emma closed her eyes. Against her better judgment, her heart whispered yes. The next day, Ethan was waiting when she arrived. His usual calm looked frayed, as though he hadn't slept either. Emma, he began, standing as she sat down. I never wanted to lie. I just wanted one person to see me as a man, not a millionaire. When you walked up to me that day, you didn't care who I was. You just needed someone real. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could be that. Her throat tightened. But can you really be that? Or is this just a game until your world swallows you again? Ethan leaned forward, voice raw. You're not a game to me. I've built empires and I've built walls, and neither has made me feel what I feel when I'm with you. The sincerity in his tone cracked something inside her. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. But the fear of being another name in his shadow was strong. I don't know if I can live in your world, she admitted. I'm just me. Ethan reached across the table, taking her hand. That's exactly why I can't let you go. For weeks, Emma tried to navigate the whirlwind. Ethan courted her with patience, not extravagance. He didn't shower her with diamonds or private jets, though he could have. Instead, he met her in bookstores, walked with her through quiet parks, listened as she dreamed aloud about her design studio. And slowly, despite her fears, Emma began to trust. To believe that beneath the wealth, beneath the headlines, there was a man who had been waiting for someone to see him. But Daniel wasn't finished. One evening, as Emma locked up the small office space she'd finally rented for her design studio, helped by Ethan's encouragement, not his money, she found Daniel leaning against her car. Her stomach dropped. What do you want? Daniel's smile was sharp. To warn you, men like Ethan don't stay. They get bored. They move on. And when he does, you'll be left with nothing. Just like you were with me. Emma's chest burned. You don't get to define me anymore, Daniel. Don't I? He sneered. Look at you, falling into the same trap. You think you're different, but you're not. His words cut deep, not because she believed them, but because a small, fearful part of her still doubted. That night, she avoided Ethan's calls. When they finally met again, Ethan noticed the distance. What's wrong? He asked, concern etched on his face. Emma's voice wavered. What if Daniel's right? What if one day you wake up and realize I don't fit into your life? Ethan's eyes flashed with intensity. He took her hands in his. Emma, listen to me. I've lived in boardrooms, penthouses, on covers of magazines. None of it mattered. Do you know when I started living? The moment you hugged me in that cafe. I don't care about the rest. I care about you. Her breath caught at the fierceness in his words. And in that moment, she believed him. But the real test came weeks later at a charity gala Ethan was obligated to attend. It was his world, opulent, glittering, full of people who saw him as a trophy. Emma had avoided it until then, but this time, he asked her to be by his side. She nearly said no, but then she remembered his words. I care about you, and she wanted to be brave enough to believe it. The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers and champagne glasses. Eyes followed them as they entered, Ethan cross with a woman no one recognized. Emma felt small, exposed. But Ethan's hand on her back steadied her. Daniel was there too. Of course he was. Smirking, whispering to others, waiting for her to falter. At one point, he cornered her near the terrace. See, he murmured. You don't belong here. They're all staring. You'll never fit. Emma's heart pounded, but before she could reply, Ethan appeared, stepping between them. His voice was low, controlled, but dangerous. Touch her again. Speak to her again. And I'll make sure you're not invited into any room I walk into. And trust me, Daniel, you need those rooms more than they need you. Daniel's smirk slipped. He muttered a curse and stormed off, defeated. Emma's eyes stung with tears. Why do you keep fighting for me? She whispered. Ethan cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing her cheek. Because from the moment you hugged me, you became the only thing worth fighting for. Her walls crumbled. Right there, under the glow of the chandeliers and the eyes of the city's elite, Emma kissed him. Not out of fear, not out of panic, but out of love. The weeks that followed weren't perfect. There were whispers, headlines, doubts. Emma had moments of fear, and Ethan had moments of overprotectiveness. But they worked through them, not because it was easy, but because they refused to let go. Emma opened her studio, and Ethan was her first client, insisting she design his new offices, not as a favor, but as proof of her talent. She flourished. He found peace. And sometimes, when they sat together in that same cafe where it had all begun, Emma would lean against him and whisper, half teasing, "I still can't believe I hugged a stranger." Ethan would smile, pressing a kiss to her hair. "Best decision you ever made." And she knew, without doubt, it was true.